The man you see smiling at his brother during his sentencing is Jason Vukovich. He earned himself the name the Alaskan Avenger when he began hunting down and attacking men convicted of abusing minors. And soon, you'll hear the story directly from him in an exclusive interview.
911. Police, ambulance?
Yes, some guy just broke in with a hammer.
He broke into your house?
Yes, I've never seen him before.
When a string of break-ins and assaults began terrifying the residents of Anchorage, Alaska, the police were desperate to find out who was responsible.
Salutes to all my people in Anchorage, Alaska. I've been to Anchorage, Alaska. A lot of good people there. Salutes to you, Robinson. I see you. Salutes to all of y'all, man. I appreciate you guys.
As the police investigated, they soon realized that the three break-in victims all shared a disturbing background that would bust the case wide open. As Alaska became the center of a media storm, the police were left trying to puzzle out the perpetrator's motive. Was he a vigilante who believed he could take justice into his own hands? Or were these violent crimes all part of a revenge spree? On June 24th, 2016, Charles Albee was enjoying a peaceful morning in his home when he heard a knock at his door. Not suspecting anything dangerous could be on the other side, Charles opened it to find a tall man with dark shoulder-length hair and a black leather jacket staring down at him. The man forced his way into Charles' home and ordered him to sit on his bed. Charles followed the man's orders, but still, that didn't stop him from facing the man's wrath. The intruder slapped Charles around a few times and detailed how he was able to find Charles's address. He then stole a few items from Charles's home and fled. As soon as the intruder was gone, Charles called the police and told them everything he could remember about the man, including the fact that he appeared to be holding a notebook with a list of names in it. He also told them something about himself, which would soon be a key piece of evidence for the police. Charles Albee was convicted in 2003 of second-degree abuse of a minor, and the intruder had found his address through an offender registry. 3 days later, the police received a late-night call from a man named Andres Barbosa. According to Andres, he had been sleeping in his home when frantic knocking on his door woke him up at 4 a.m. When he opened
It's a rude awakening, boy. Hammer time.
Door, he was greeted by a tall man in a black leather jacket, as well as two women.
Punisher.
The group pushed their way into Andres' home and ordered him to sit in a chair. Following their instructions, Andres sat and suddenly one of the women pulled out her phone and began recording.
Women.
The intruder then punched Andres several times before threatening to, quote, bash in his dome with a hammer. The man then berated him and stated that he was here to collect what Andres owed.
Okay.
With the women's help, the man stole several things from Andres' home, including the man's truck, before the group fled the scene. While police were already pretty certain that this attack was related to Charles's break-in 2 days prior, there were enough differences that there was a possibility it could be someone else. For instance, the two women involved in Andres' assault had not been reported at the previous break-in. Additionally, the hammer used by the perpetrator in Andres' assault wasn't present in the assault against Charles. However, once officers learned that Andres Barbosa was a child abuser who was placed on the registry in 2014 after being caught with inappropriate photos of minors, they knew the two cases were connected. With this information, the police were beginning to see a pattern forming. Was this man going after child abusers? Was he just a man who had decided that the child abuser registry was an easy way to find potential break-ins? Or was there more to his motive? Detectives wouldn't have to wait long to find out, as 2 days later, another break-in was reported. However, this one had escalated much further than the others. On June 29th, police responded to a 911 call of another break-in, this time one that had ended in violent bloodshed. After arriving and rushing the man, Wesley Demarest, to the hospital, they were able to interview him and get an idea of what had taken place that night.
Start from the beginning and tell me what happened tonight.
Well, I was asleep. My roommate pounded on my door or something.
Justice pounded on your door. Redemption.
Woke up and he said somebody's trying to break in. So I got out of bed, and by the time I got to my door, there was some guy standing there with a hammer.
See, now here's the problem with all this. This guy goes. There's a reason we got laws, yo. You know what I'm saying? This guy goes, he gets the roommate instead of the other guy, then what? You know what I'm saying? Like, the mission went to hell.
My roommate just to go sit down somewhere, didn't do anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Then
He targeted him. He targeted him specifically.
The guy told my roommate just to go sit down somewhere, didn't do anything.
Okay.
Then he started yelling at me about this offender. It was 2006. I had a conviction. I had attempted something or other with my step-granddaughter.
Okay.
And he said that he was avenging something. And he kept swinging
He was avenging that, you pig. That's what he was avenging.
the hammer back and forth. Told me to get down on my knees, which I didn't. Then he told me to lay down on my bed, which I didn't. And then he slapped me a couple of times. Or I tried to hit him in the throat a couple of times. Tried to push him. Then he told me to get down on my knees. So I think then he hit me with the hammer on the side of my face.
Wesley Demarest is a registered child abuser who only served 9 months in jail for attempting to assault his kindergarten-aged granddaughter. It wouldn't take long for them to find the man responsible for the attack. The 911 call from Wesley's roommate had mentioned that the intruder left the house in a car shortly before the police arrived. So there was a good chance the man was still in the area.
This guy's leaving now. He's getting in his car now.
What kind of car?
It's a small car.
Do you feel safe going to check on your roommate, make sure he's okay?
I wonder what's the girls' connection in this, because they said there was 2 girls with them on the second assault.
Yeah, I'm gonna go there now. Oh man, he's really bleeding. We need an ambulance
He's
too.
bleeding?
Yes.
Okay, where's he bleeding from?
He's bleeding from his head.
After searching through nearby roads, the police pulled over a suspicious Honda Civic not far from the victim's home. An officer approached the vehicle and introduced himself to the driver, a man by the name of Jason Vukovich. To the officer's surprise, Jason quickly and freely admitted to being the man who broke into Wesley's home. Realizing that they'd finally found their intruder, the officer began recording a preliminary interview with Jason. The officer's roadside interview with Jason started out fairly standard, with the officer reading Jason his Miranda rights and questioning him about what exactly went on at Wesley's house. When Jason is reluctant to talk about the actual attack with Wesley, despite admitting to being the perpetrator, the officer changes tactics and begins questioning Jason on how he discovered Wesley in the first place.
I believe it is February 2000. So you just found the address, saw this guy, decided to go over to his house? Absolutely not. Okay, how did you decide to go over here? Well, I went to the bistro first. Right. That's where you work? And I talked to the executive chef, because I absolutely will not make any maneuver, period. Take any actions at all unless I go see her first. And what's her name? Her name is Cherie. And I've been working for this family for 40 years. Oh, 40 years. Yeah, okay, correct.
So I guess that's a mentor or something?
She has no relationship. Cherie doesn't know these people, period, does she? I can't speak on anything that she does or doesn't know. I don't want to say something like that. What I do know is this.
Good.
I will never take any action unless I go see my handler first. Okay.
Wait, if he's calling his mentors or his boss the handler, he's saying that he can't attest to anything they know or don't know, but he don't make a move without his handlers knowing first. So he putting them out there.
The answer from Jason immediately gives the officer some crucial insight into his psyche. It appears Jason is displaying delusions of grandeur by seeing Cherie as his CIA handler, which is a common symptom of bipolar disorder. While it is fully possible that Jason is just saying these things to confuse or deceive the officer, it seems much more likely that Jason has convinced himself Cherie is a handler, sending him out on righteous missions. Those with bipolar disorders also suffer through phases of mania, where they may experience extreme happiness, anger, poor judgment, and paranoia. It's possible that Jason was in the throes of a manic phase when he decided to attack his 3 victims. After talking to the officer about Cherie, Jason was comfortable enough to tell them how he broke into Wesley's house with a hammer and got into an altercation with him.
How'd you get into the guy's house? What's the deal with the hammer? Well, that's how I got his house. Did you break your window, pried the door open? Yeah. Okay, and then you go talk to the gentleman?
I attempted to, yeah.
Okay. What happened? Did you assault him?
He started freaking out, going wild. My intention tonight was to sit him down and remind him that his family, nothing like this is what's going to happen. I was giving him some open-hand slaps because that's typically an appropriate way.
So open hand slaps?
To notify someone that what they're doing is extremely inappropriate.
Okay, how many of those?
7.
7 of them?
He had the cadence in his head. He played that shit back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay. And then what happened? Did you assault him with a hammer at all?
No, he started attacking.
Started attacking you?
Correct.
Was he attacking with his fists? Or?
Oh, yeah, he's kind of a big guy. He's pretty big guy. I didn't realize he was like 6'6", and kind of a monster. So let me tell you once again, courage is acting in spite of it.
Sure, we got that.
So he attacked me, and I'm really not much of a fighter, to be honest with you, seriously.
While Jason's account of events did slightly contradict that of both Wesley and his roommate, this interview made it clear to police that Jason was the intruder. Not only that, but his comments made them confident in the fact that he had also been responsible for the other 2 break-ins as well. Despite Jason being the only one involved with this break-in, he wasn't actually alone in the car. In the passenger seat was a woman named Alisa Geisler, whom police suspected was potentially one of the women involved in the break-in and assault of Andres Barbosa. Both Jason and Alisa were brought into custody for further questioning, as officers hoped that these 2 could shed more light on the many questions surrounding the case. First and foremost, why had Jason started hunting down offenders? Alisa was the first one to be interviewed at the police station. Detective Landis, the main investigator conducting the interrogation, walks into the interrogation room, only to find Alisa asleep in her chair. He tries to begin the interrogation after waking Alisa up. However, she's crashing from a high on methamphetamines and is struggling to stay awake. It's slightly questionable that officers would choose to interview Alisa in this state, as her inebriated state would affect both her judgment and her memory. Additionally, Alisa's mental state hinders her ability to make decisions, including consenting to the police interrogation. Despite this, officers are able to get a few key pieces of information out of her.
Is there a hammer in the car?
Oh, yeah, there is.
What?
So if I want to get the hammer, where do I need to look in the car to find it?
I think it's just straight there in front seat.
Front seat? Okay.
Given the state Wesley was found in,
What? Yo, that's not... She's not in a position to attest to anything.
it's likely that this hammer would be covered in blood. If the police were able to recover it from Jason's car, it could serve as damning DNA evidence against him. Alongside this information, Alisa is also able to nudge detectives closer towards Jason's motive.
Does Jason have a particular dislike for sex offenders? Has he ever talked to you about that?
I don't know, most of them, they've been to jail. I have a special dislike for them, yes. I would say yes.
Unfortunately, before the detectives can get any more useful information out of Alisa, she passes out once more. After letting Alisa sleep for a few minutes, they try to interrogate her again. At first, it seems that she's just giving them more of the same information, until she mentions something interesting.
What was the conversation that Lucky had with you when he came out of the house? Did he say anything about hurting somebody or doing what was righteous?
Yeah, something like that, probably.
Probably? Do you remember what it was?
Probably.
Doing the work of the righteous.
It seems like here the detectives are attempting to use words that the other witnesses used in order to spark Alisa's memory and try to engage her. While this would normally be frowned upon in interviews, Alisa is extremely sedated and unlikely to provide any helpful information on her own. It might have been beneficial for the officers to let her sleep it off for longer and try to talk to her more openly when she was coherent, but they may have been worried that she wouldn't cooperate when she sobered up. The only person who could confirm or deny this for the police would be Jason himself, and it was finally time to interview him.
And I'm sure he's not
in
gonna
this
hold
interrogation, Detective Anderson takes over while Detective Landis sits in. Unlike most people brought in on assault and robbery charges, Jason is overwhelmingly friendly towards the detectives and is happy to chat their ears off. Despite his charming and polite demeanor.
Told you, he probably ain't gonna need too much pushing. He ready to tell the story. It's like, hey man, It had to go down how it went down. This is why.
Jason avoids actually answering many of the detective's questions.
Let's see. Maybe not.
Instead, going into
maybe I'm wrong. He's gonna get into the philosophy of it, but again, they don't see his vision.
detail about his philosophies on life.
I mow the lawn with that and pull weeds and change light bulbs. And the reason why is because I'm attempting to demonstrate humility.
Detective Anderson stays calm and friendly towards Jason as he rants and slowly prods at him until Jason gives the detective some useful information. By keeping his cool and acting like Jason's friend, the detective is able to build up a rapport with Jason and earn his trust. This tactic works, and Jason eventually gives the detective some information they can work with.
I'm just trying to get a sense of what's been going on.
I guess without getting into a whole bunch of unnecessary specifics, I can tell you that what's been going on is hard work. And hard work out of concern for kids.
Jason makes it clear to the detectives that everything he's done has been out of concern for children, and he even gives them extra insight on how he views his crimes against offenders.
People who have committed crimes against children have been convicted in a court of law, and you want to see that these people get what you believe they deserve. Is that not correct, or is that correct?
Let me think. Yeah. Be careful how I respond. Okay. This is what I would like to say. Do I think taking retributive action on people that have done something to kids, wanton or otherwise, is what I want? I have to say, not specifically, no. It's not my desire to go running willy-nilly through this life, doing something like that.
Maybe what you want isn't the right phrase. Maybe it's what you feel you were required to do, or that it's the right thing to do.
Those are both extremely accurate statements.
So even though you may not particularly want to do it, it's kind of a sense of duty.
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt. It's kind of the way I say it is I wouldn't expect to have privilege or extra freedom in this life without also being willing to participate in the entire practice, not just, okay, cool, I can have all the good stuff, but none of the work.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, I think when you use the term work, that's probably what I'm seeing is it's out of a sense of duty. It's actual work. It's not something you enjoy to do, but it's something you're required to do or you feel obligated to do.
That is without any exception the case. And I can tell you that internally, I am in no way, shape, or form a violent or dangerous person. I certainly have no assaults on my record. I would not seek to I would say I would derive no joy from a person suffering anywhere.
Jason's urge to protect children is certainly admirable, but he could just...
That was very concise. As crazy as it may sound, he was pretty concise with what he had to say. A sense of duty.
Be using that as a convenient excuse to enact violence on others. The police have to determine how much of this is true in order to fully understand Jason's motive. Unfortunately for the detectives, Jason's refusal to answer most questions in a straightforward manner makes it hard for them to get any concrete details out of him, forcing them to look elsewhere for information.
Hello?
Hey, this is Jim Anderson with APD. I got word from you at the DA's office that you had some info about Vukovich and what he was doing last time he was locked up.
He was talking to others about where they would go around and find guys that were convicted of child molestation or whatever, and he would tell them that they would provide them protection, but that they were keeping an eye on them, and that they knew who they were, and was trying to recruit other guys to join him in doing that.
It wasn't hard for Detective Anderson to acquire Jason's rather extensive rap sheet, and it became evident that Jason had a history of trying to deal with offenders. Now that there was more than enough evidence to prove Jason was responsible for the break-ins and assaults, it was just a matter of time until his trial and sentencing. While sitting in jail, Jason came up with a plea deal that would not only shock the press and the police, but would also reveal to the world the true reason he went after these offenders. On September 16, 2016, Several months after his initial arrest, Jason sent a letter to the Anchorage Daily News claiming that he would be willing to serve the combined sentencing of not only his 3 victims, but also the sentence given to Jason's stepfather, the man who assaulted him as a child.
Woo-wee. What a fucking statement. My sentence should be no longer than those served by my victims and my abuser. That says it all right there. He was ready to face that time.
But never served time for the crime. With the publishing of this letter, it became clear to the world that Jason wasn't just attacking offenders in an attempt to keep the local children safe. He was someone who had gone through the same pain and confusion that these offenders' victims had gone through. In his mind, he was going to do whatever he could to make sure that none of the men he could find would ever hurt a child like that again. The question was, is this vigilante justice or revenge?
Call it what the fuck.
Well, we reached out to Jason, and he recounted that final incident that resulted in his arrest.
I started going places and knocking on doors, and, for the most part, delivering a pretty stern sermon and giving these guys a message of sitting them down in a chair, instilling through fear that, hey, there's people around here that care about these kids. Like, I never wore a mask. I never brought a gun. I never, this was not like some sort of murderous mission by any means. The last one I went to this guy's house, and I was knocking on all the windows and doors for probably 45 minutes. His lights were on, telling him to come outside. I needed to talk to him, and I knew he was awake. Obviously, he didn't want to come out and see me. So I grabbed a hammer out of a tool bag in the back of my car, and I used it to smash out the side light of his window and then climbed inside. He was a relatively wealthy person with his home had been converted, unbeknownst to me, to some sort of a bed and breakfast that was on a lake. And so a guy and a lady were coming out of one of the bedroom doors, and I knew they weren't him because I'd seen his picture. So I told him, get back in the bedroom. This doesn't have anything to do with you. And then I went into the master bedroom, and
he was on his Dexter shit. He wasn't just picking at random. He was on some, I seen dude's picture, I'm going to get the dude.
Get in there, and this guy is probably, 6'4", 6'5", 300 pounds. This is a big guy.
Shit.
And I told him to sit down on the bed, and he didn't want to, and he started pushing on me a little bit, and then he started punching me in the face. Then I got angry, and I realized I had that hammer in the bag on the floor in between us, and so I just squatted down and picked it up, and I hit him one time, and then in the course of the struggle, I hit him 2 more times. I told him, you can consider me an avenging angel for the children you're missing. And anyway, I'm assuming that the couple that I told to get back in the bedroom called the police, because by the time that whole physical altercation was over, I got back in the car, and the police were already coming in, and they stopped the car. And police were patting me on the back, asking me, man, did you get that motherfucker? Did you get him good? Were shaking my hand, all this sort of stuff. I was in shock. Ambulance is going by. I'm thinking to myself,
and if you listen to him talking to that cop's laughing with him when he says I didn't realize the guy was 6'3" and a monster, and the cop's laughing with him and shit.
I've probably just killed this person, and the rest of my life is gone. I am not a violent person, and I don't take joy in any sort of violent confrontations. I never have been, never will be. However, when you're regressed to the state of a child and you realize this time I'm going to win against this sort of person, there's some sort of a strange, it's just sort of a strange feeling in that moment that it needs to happen, or it needed to happen. That's the best way I can explain it.
In a recent interview conducted with the Unforbidden Truth
podcast, it just needed to happen. It just needed to happen.
Jason recounted his childhood and how it led him down this path of a violent crime spree.
I have no memories whatsoever of about 12 years old on back. So I suppose, and I think that's a trauma-related response.
Jason's memories began with the abuse from his stepfather, Larry Lee Fulton. Jason and his brother Joel were both subject to abuse at Larry's hands, with the monster creating a custom 2x4 with a 2-handed grip to beat the backs of his stepson's legs. Not only did the two young boys have to grapple with beatings so brutal they struggled to stand, but their stepfather soon began assaulting them during late-night prayer sessions.
My brother and I shared a room where he would come in and, try to touch our genitals and all types of things like that. And again, as young kids, it's extremely difficult to make sense of what's happening to you.
While struggling to deal with the mental turmoil caused by his stepfather's actions, Jason turned to his mother for help.
Neither one of us had the courage to say anything, so I told Joel, that's my brother, I'm going to tell her, I'm going to tell Mom what he's doing. So I told her, and she absolutely didn't believe a word.
I was just about to ask y'all, what do you think? Did she betray his trust by not believing him? Why would a child lie about that?
We said, and made me sit there on a kitchen stool until he came home from work, then had him march in the kitchen, and she did the standard, tell him what you told me, tell him what you told me. Made me recite the abuse to him, which he basically was very dismissive about, and mumbled something about being curious about whether we were maturing or, something like that.
Jason and Joel were forced to endure the coming years with no hope of help from any adult in their lives. Eventually, it got to be too much for Joel, and he ran away from home, leaving Jason to face the full wrath of their stepfather. Joel was eventually found by the cops and was arrested for being a runaway. However, Joel made the brave decision to tell the cops why he ran away. An investigation into Larry Fulton was started, and he was eventually found guilty on charges of second-degree abuse of a minor. In the grand scheme of things, this charge was meaningless. Instead of sending Larry to prison or removing Joel and Jason from his abusive care, the state of Alaska suspended the 3 years of prison Larry was sentenced to as a part of his plea deal and sent him right back home to torment his children more. Not only did Joel face physical punishment from his stepfather for going to the police, but he claims he was also mocked and ridiculed by other members of his family for his confession.
It's crazy.
Joel and Jason were pulled from school immediately after Larry's trial.
Again,
and the family moved.
Set up for failure early. You know what I'm saying? Set up for failure. Everybody that was supposed to be the last line of defense failed. Garbage, trash, worth nothing. Left nothing but a blemish. No good came of it except for, what Jason made of his life afterwards.
Moved to a town where Larry's abuse would be less known. Looking for any way to get out of the house, Jason began taking odd jobs fishing, hunting, or doing commercial work. Through these jobs, he was able to save up some money, and at the age of 16, Jason snuck out his bedroom window and ran away like his brother had done 3 years prior.
Part of the process of leaving home, my parents found out I had been sneaking out, so I came home from one of those nights, and my clothing was in trash bags on the front porch, and all of the windows and doors were locked, and they had kept my driver's license and my social security card, all my identifying papers.
Jason was able to afford a plane ride to Spokane, Washington with what money he had left. But with no ID, he was unable to get paid by any employers. Soon his money started to run out, and Jason was forced to turn to petty theft and forged checks to afford food. 5 months after starting his criminal career, the law finally caught up with Jason and he did time in juvenile hall. Shortly after his release, he would be arrested and brought back for similar crimes, a cycle that would continue for much of Jason's life. Jason commented on this part of his life in the letter saying, "Being a thief and a liar fit nicely with my lack of self-worth. My silent understanding that I was worthless, a throwaway. The foundations laid in my youth never went away. They simply remained hidden, and everything I chose to do was built on those thoughts and feelings from the past. I'd started down a long, winding path of deception and self-abuse."
Understand something. This is a man that can articulate to himself how he feels about the situation and how it's affecting him, right? These other kids, like this 11-year-old Sicario that we saw yesterday or the day before, these kids don't have this wherewithal. They have not come to this conclusion yet. You know what I'm saying? They're just lost in the sauce, All right? Salutes Rilo. He said, dude needs a medal. Dorada said, good for him. This man felt privileged. I'm sure that triggered him. Wow, indeed. 298 said, I ain't gonna lie, Shy. This shit's hard to listen to, G. It be like that. That's real life. And a lot of people just wear blinders to it. And as much as it hurts, you gotta know where it comes from, what triggers it, what to look for, what to see. You gotta know.
By the time he was 20 years old, Jason had spent over half of his adult life behind bars.
That's the right word. I be say, yeah, he's extremely well spoken and self-aware. He is self-aware at this point. You know what I'm saying? At this point, he can dig deep and figure things out for himself. He understands it. These throwaways that are throwaways don't know that they're throwaways. He was completely self-aware of the throwaway nature of his existence. Why? Because he had been failed from the beginning, just like that other kid did. Their mother is an abuser as well. She draws the same kind of people to her, abusers. And who suffers? The kids suffer. And then later on, we blame them for the shit that they do. It's like, oh, they knew right from wrong. But did they? They tried to do right. He went and told his mama. What did she do? She failed him. She was the last line of defense. That was her opportunity to rescue him. That was an event that was going to change everything in all of their lives. It never happened. Why? Because she didn't believe her child.
The time not spent in prison was occupied by drugs and dead-end jobs. At 30 years old, Jason decided a change of scenery might be what he needed to bring his life in order, and he soon found himself back in his home state of Alaska. For a while, it seemed like life was improving, but that wouldn't last. Jason was finding joy in the little things again and was able to support himself through a legitimate job. Unfortunately, Jason lost the job a few months later and once again found himself resorting to crime. This would lead to a 6-year prison sentence, shortly followed by another 3-year stint in prison when Jason was caught violating his parole. After being released in the summer of 2016, Jason was once again aiming to live a humble and simple life. But those plans changed when he began to hear rumors of men in his community who were taking advantage of children. According to Jason, hearing these rumors made him think back to his own horrific childhood, and he felt the overwhelming urge to take matters into his own hands and hunt down the offenders in his area. These actions inevitably led to Jason being caught. He was eventually brought to the exact same courthouse his monstrous stepfather.
Yeah, shout out Big June. He said, let's tap that like button, people. We need them numbers up. It's free, by the way.
Father was tried. Despite many lauding Jason and
the irony, that his stepfather's filthy ass was in that same courtroom,
calling his actions heroic, he ended his letter by discouraging copycat behavior, stating, "If you've already lost your youth like me due to a child abuser, please do not throw away your present and your future by committing acts of violence." While it can be tempting to explain away Jason's violent actions because he was abused, it's important to remember that many abuse victims don't go on to engage in criminal behavior. However, being abused or neglected as a child can increase the likelihood of arrest as a juvenile by 59%, as an adult by 28%, and for a violent crime by 30%. Many victims of abuse develop revenge fantasies where they imagine themselves standing up to their abuser and fighting back. In Jason's case, these fantasies may have made him feel all-powerful or divinely righteous to the point that he felt he was capable of making these revenge fantasies a reality by hunting down local offenders. Not only was Jason able to get symbolic revenge against the man who hurt him, but he was also able to help other children in the process by doing for them what he wished someone would have done for him. While Jason may have been able to gain some catharsis for his trauma through this revenge, he paid the ultimate price for it. In the days leading up to his official sentencing, Jason wrote another letter to the Anchorage Daily News, this time detailing his life story, explaining how he found himself in this situation, and discouraging other victims of abuse from following in his steps. He wrote, "To those who understand how it feels to live through abuse and carry it with you, let me share my story in an effort to prevent its repetition." Much of the public was on Jason's side, and they rallied for him to be given a light sentencing. In the end, Jason was given a plea deal that would reduce his charges. He recounted how officials reacted to his plea deal.
I wrote them an offer through the newspaper to the prosecutor's office, and I told them I will plead guilty to any combination of charges you wish, anything you want, with the following caveat. My sentence is to equal in length what each files served in prison for harming a child. So the guy that his own daughter received 2 years and change. I'll serve his 2 years and change. The guy that was convicted
A guy that raped his own daughter, 2 years and change. What the planet do I live on? What planet do I live on? The guy that was convicted of MOing his 10-month-old.
I think his 10-month-old granddaughter got 3 years in prison. I'll serve his 3 years. So now we're
what planet am I living on?
at 5 years, 5.5 years. The child photographer did 2 years or did a year and a program or something. So I'll do his, and I told them I'll even serve the 3 years in prison that you suspended for the monster that made me. So I'll do 9 years, 6 months, run that right now. I'll sign, I'll plead to whatever you want.
That is the gangsterest plea deal move I've ever seen in my life, boy. What? He made them have to look at what they do. Who knows if they gave a shit or not, but he made them look at what they do.
And of course, they summarily laughed at
Yeah,
it
laugh
for the
at it all
monster
you
that
want.
made me.
Here's what it is. They missed the point.
3 years in prison that you suspended for the monster that made me. So I'll do 9 years, 6 months, run that right now. I'll sign, I'll plead to whatever you want. And of course, they summarily laughed that offer out of the courtroom and said, this is not how we conduct business in the state of Alaska.
He was eventually sentenced to 25 years in prison.
Shit.
Not only was the public
25 years didn't murk nobody. Because from my understanding, they all lived. 25 years didn't murk nobody. I be saying you live on a planet where that guy got 2 years for that, and at the same time, there's thousands of people in jail for years for less than a stack worth of rugs. And Buddy, they gave Buddy 25 years. This is the planet we live on. And people want to tell me about government and this, that, and the other. Stop it. Stop it. He ain't murked nobody. He ain't got no bodies. He got no bodies. Ivy said also you live on a planet where we still let the Catholic Church run elementary schools. Bananas. 25 years. They gave this guy no bodies. They all lived, right? From my understanding.
opinion of Jason incredibly high, but after being sent to prison, Jason discovered that many of the guards and fellow prisoners also considered Jason a hero, especially when his sentence was 3 times longer than the combined sentences
I
of
put
the
Jason on a t-shirt.
men Jason assaulted. While being processed into prison, it was discovered that Jason was suffering from PTSD, which he believes was a factor in his crimes. Research shows an association between being the victim of trauma, especially chronic victimization, and the later perpetration of a crime.
Okay.
After serving the first 4 years of his sentence, he attempted to appeal, stating that his PTSD should have been taken into account during the sentencing process. However, this appeal was denied, and his sister Angelina has taken to social media to advocate for her brother's freedom. She's also managed to gather over 27,000 signatures on a Change.org petition, calling for Jason's release. Speaking to Jason from prison, he wanted to make one thing clear.
It's also important for people to know that never at any time was it me that went and sought out any sort of notoriety for this.
Since being in prison, he's reflected a lot not only on his own life, but that of some of the people he's...
But you deserve some notoriety on this, Papas. You deserve that shit, all right? Also said need to put some money on his books. Dante said Ish all the way effed up. Big Blanc said gotta send him some cantina. In the whole plea deal, in the whole letter, he made it clear, don't be copycats, don't get in trouble over this, that, the other. Made this clear, that clear. And then said, and I ain't look for no promotion. I ain't look for no, no fanfare, no pomp and circumstance. I did what I did as a duty. Salute, Jason Vukovich.
He's met behind bars.
In retrospect, after
Out of some being in prison,
that went and sought out any sort of notoriety for this.
since being in prison, he's reflected a lot not only on his own life, but that of some of the people he's met behind bars.
In retrospect, after being educated while being in here, you realize that childhood trauma is rocket fuel for everything destructive that a person has in their life. And no one tells you this, and no one comes along and gives you any pointers or indications or anything. you get jail sentences and people tell you you're bad and horrible. And for me, I was a thief and a liar for many years of my life. You never stop to think why. I started getting letters from people all over the world, and contrary to what you might think, these weren't letters with high praise and accolades and pats on the back and things like that. Typically, these letters were 2 or 3 or 4 page descriptions of people's pain and the suffering and the things they went through when they were a kid. As I started realizing I wasn't alone. While I've been in prison, I have done informal surveys, and I'm telling you, the percentage is so high. Guys that end up leading a life of crime or drug addiction or demonstrate criminal behavior, it is so high, like probably 70 or 80% of these guys suffered childhood trauma or abuse. In my free time, I do a lot of...
Which is, again, the reason I said earlier, the world's attention should be on protecting the children. Because look what this trauma is creating. And the trauma is just getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper.
Writing, it was really cool. It's just actually finished a book with Professor Joshua Long at UMass in Boston. We co-wrote a book together called Legacy of Retribution. There's a guy named that runs a hardcore recovery coaching business, and he's offered me a job as a recovery coach, a trauma and addiction recovery coach, which is great.
I'm going to fill you in on who that is that he just spoke of that says that they got a job for him when he comes home.
A book together called Legacy of Retribution.
They redacted his name here, and it might be somebody else at this point. They didn't announce it at this point, but...
That runs a hardcore recovery coaching business, and he's offered me a job as a recovery coach.
That's JD DeLay, y'all, that got him the job and all of that good stuff waiting for him.
I'm an addiction recovery coach, which is great. Probably devote, the meaningful portion of the rest of my life to doing some sort of lasting legislative pursuit to change some of the laws pertaining to child abuse. Certainly in my state, maybe nationwide, would like to create an SOS app that allows kids to self-report abuse if they're suffering in the household. And that to me seems like a huge missing component in our society. And if that isn't a glaring, issue, I don't know what is. And people need to pay attention to that. The justice system needs to be realigned.
Jason was granted parole at his hearing on April 10, 2023. However, in a seemingly unprecedented move, his actual release date was set for April 11, 2028. Our most recent communication from Jason came in the form of a message.
Ain't that some bullshit? Think about that bullshit right there. Granted parole, right? Effective 2028. What kind of monkey ball ass shit is that? Huh?
The 8. Our most recent communication from Jason came in the form of a message on May 25, 2023, and reads as follows. Thanks for the kind message. I appreciate the support. Also, let everyone know that the book that I wrote with Professor Long is available for pre-order on June 30th, Barnes & Noble. It's called Avenging Child Abuse.
I gotta look for that.
Let me know if you want to do any follow-up conversations. I'm just trying to come to terms with the whole decision and do my time as quietly as possible. Needless to say, it was worth it to me then. It's worth it to me now. But you are correct. This was a very, very strange decision by the board.
Fucking ridiculous.
No classes to take, no further therapy available, just more time required.
That's
odd.
bananas.
The circumstances of the 5-year delay of Jason's release are unclear and seem to be based on the inner workings of Alaska's parole system.
Alaska, you ain't shit.
They say teeth are stronger than diamonds.
I love my people in Alaska, but Alaskan legislature, y'all ain't shit.
As one of his really super good friends, I've kind of sat on this for a few days until he said, hey, it's okay. I want everybody to know what's going on. Me and him had been talking for a while, and he's like, I got a parole hearing coming up. And I'm like, hey, why don't you let me send you a letter of employment from a letter of employment from my recovery coaching business, and it'll show that you have employment when you get out. It'll look real good for the parole board. And I said, when you get out, I'll hire you on. You could be a recovery coach and you can work with me. I think you'd be really good at it. And he was like, bro, I love that idea. Because he's been in there mentoring people, helping people. And he's just a really good dude. He's really been doing some stuff in there. So he really liked that idea. We did it. And they ended up shaving off 5 years off of his sentence, which left him still with 10 years. He still had 10 years to do. So with 10 years left, they shaved off 5. That meant he had 5 years left to do. Now, in Alaska, they gauge what you're available for with programs as your worst case scenario. The worst thing that could possibly happen to you, the latest date that you could possibly be incarcerated, that's what they set as your actual release date when it comes to programs. So, he wouldn't be able to get none of this, none of that, none of this, none of that. So he's been fighting to be able to get to minimum custody, right? And every week we talk about it. Once you get to minimum custody, you'll be able to work in the community. You'll be able to actually get access to things, because they don't let him get access to nothing in there. He's in a really bad joint. Goose Creek is not a great place to be. And so he was really stoked. And he called me a few days ago, and he's like, hey, so I went in to have my appointment for minimum custody. And he said the lady told me that they just changed the law and that they're now going by what my parole date would be. He said she asked me if I wanted to go to a minimum custody prison or if I wanted to come home on ankle monitor, on electronic monitoring. They don't use ankle monitors in Alaska. They use Apple Watches. So the Alaskan Avenger could come out here and do house arrest with electronic monitoring and wear an Apple Watch. And I was like, what did you say? He's like, what do you think I said? I said, my dog, hell yeah. So we were really, really, really stoked about that situation.
Salutes.
I was like, I needed to know a timeline, because here's the thing, is that Jason needs to have a place to live. He needed to have 2 months of the money that it's going to be for the electronic monitoring on his books to be able to cement this. He needs to have a phone. There's certain things that he needs to be able to do, and it's going to be expensive. And also, we've been talking for months about how when he gets out, me and Jax are going to be there at the gate. We want to document him walking out back into the free world. I'm going to take him out, take him shopping, get him some new clothes, get him some new shoes, get him set up for some of the things that he needs to be able to make it. I also need to show him how to make content, because what he wants to do, besides being a recovery coach, is he wants to get on here on YouTube, and he wants to be able to vibe out and zone out with you guys, because I've been telling him for so long how much I love doing this and how much it's enriched my life and how much we've been able to build a positive community and we've been able to raise awareness for, kids. He's decided he never wants to break a law again in his life. He never wants to be back in prison. He doesn't want to hurt people. He wants to use his influence to be able to change people's perspectives and be able to help do the things that he wants to do that way.
Listen, there's mad documentaries that could be done on Buddy. There's mad movies and TV shows that could be done on Buddy.
Instead of doing things that could get his freedom taken away from him. So, I'm getting him a new iPhone. I'm going to set him up with, the little studio stuff that he needs to be able to start making content. And, after we take him shopping, get him acclimated, get him a nice steak, all of that, we're going to sit down and we're going to do an interview. And he's going to be talking to you guys directly in this community. He wants to talk to this community before he talks to any other community on social media. And when we do that, he'll have his platform set up so you guys will be able to subscribe to him directly. This dude is one of the most poignant, intelligent, introspective, well-spoken people that you guys are ever going to hear from, man. Jason is so on point, and his views on protecting children are so amazing and so on point. I'm really excited, you guys. This is going to be really good. What we're talking about as far as time is 5 to 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks at the absolute most. Dude is going to be back on the streets within 2 months. And I cannot.
I was in his live today, and there was people asking for an Alaskan Avenger update. So it should be coming up soon, hopefully.
Like, for me, seeing a homie come out, especially someone who, in my opinion, he never should have been in prison in the first place. What he did was absolutely an amazing thing. So seeing him get locked up, especially for so long, it sucks, man. And he deserves the chance to be out here in the real world again. He deserves to be able to speak his truth to you guys. I am so incredibly excited. Jason Vukovich, the Alaskan Avenger, is going to be on the streets. We're just getting money together to be able to get him an apartment. We have to get money together to be able to get him his first 2 months for house arrest. And that's basically all he needs, because I'm buying him a brand new iPhone. I'm going to get him, probably the 14, because I hate the 15.
I will definitely do a live. When it goes down, I will do a live reaction to JD Delay, all of that good stuff. Everything that has to do with the Alaskan Avenger, y'all are with it. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the coverage of the Alaskan Avenger. I think it was a story that needed to be told. People got to know what's happening out here.
Today he called me because we've been making all of these plans, but when he called me, instead of saying, you have a call from Goose Creek Correctional Facility, which is the medium max that he's been at for like 9 years, it said that he was at the farm camp. I think it's called McLaren Farm Camp. So he is literally at minimum custody. He is at a prison right now that is basically, it's a farm. It has no fence around it. He is like out there and he's driving around. Like, they took him from being in yellow scrubs, like a yellow prison jumpsuit, to now he's wearing jeans, and he's like, they gave me chaps, bro. I've never worn chaps before. Why do I have chaps? And he's out there. He's really out there, man. He's having a little bit of culture shock, because when you go from a minimum, a medium max to a minimum, it's way, way different. It's absolutely a whole different scene. So people are more disrespectful. The COs are more disrespectful. You have like open everything. Like, you could just walk around the place the whole day and you only have to check in twice a day, as opposed to being locked in a cell all day long.
Salutes. Good for him.
Basketball is back.
That's
Watch
progress,
the action live
right?
on a variety of networks.
All day long. So he's kind of tripping right now. He called me earlier today and he was like, man, I don't really know what to do with myself. And I was like, you already know exactly what to do with yourself. You reached out, you called somebody who cares about you, and we can talk about this. And you can call me 24/7 anytime you need to. You can reach out, you can talk to me, but he's still in line for the electronic monitoring. So within the next like 30 days, they have, okay, so the way this works is you put in the application, they have 30 days to notify your victims. Now, 1 out of his 3 victims is already dead. If you guys saw the interviews that his victim did on the news, the one whose face was all mucked up and you could still see hammer marks in their face, that dude dead. He dead. So there's only 2 of his victims. They notify him. If the victims object, they take that into account. But they told him straight up that there's never been one person who got denied electronic monitoring because the victim objected. So, plus, I mean, bro, it's been like 10 years. It's been 10 years. So he is probably going to get out. As soon as that 30 days is up, and that'll be up the 4th of next month, then he'll have like a week until he gets out. So as soon as we hear that he's been approved and he's got a week left, me and Jax are booking flights. We're going straight to Anchorage, Alaska. We're going to land there. We're going to be waiting for him when he gets out of prison. We're going to have a hotel for however long it takes, because we won't know the exact day. He's going to be getting settled into a new apartment. We're going to take him. We're going to get him some new clothes. We're going to get him some good shoes. I'm going to bring him a brand new iPhone, and we're going to sit down and we're going to talk. He wants to talk to you guys really bad. He really has heard so much about what we're doing out here and this whole community that we've built, and he really wants to be a part of this, and he wants to be able to talk to you guys. So I'm really excited. We're going to have him on, and he's going to be building his own channel. He's going to be doing his own thing, and I'm going to get him set up so he knows how to do all that. We'll be collaborating back and forth, because this dude absolutely embodies the message that I am about. Not just what he did, but the man that he is today. The growth and the progress and the healing that he has had while he's in prison. This dude is going to impact the world in some major ways. So, first off, He's in minimum custody right now, enjoying a camp where he can go out and he can see the sky, he can see the stars. He's going to be eating fresh cooked food or fresh grown food that they grew right there and that was prepared right there for him instead of eating crap food at Goose Creek. His life just got a lot better until he gets out and takes that next huge step. He is this close to freedom. He said that one of the dudes said, "Hey man, how long's it been since you rode in a vehicle without shackles on?" He's like a decade. And he was like, "Come on, let me take you for a ride in the truck." So he jumped in the truck and was riding around the farm with this dude, man. I am so happy for him. So I told you guys I would keep you updated anytime that we had new news about what's going on with the Alaskan Avenger. He has been moved. After all this time, he's finally at a minimum.